Our number 5 team in the country going into this season is the Penn State Nittany Lions. 11-2 last year, came off a huge, and I mean a huge win in the Rose Bowl. The only 2 losses come to teams that made the college football playoff. This is a good team. I mean, this is a really, really good team. Nicholas Singleton may be one of the best young running backs in all of college football. I'm high on this kid. As an Ohio State fan, I am not looking forward to playing this kid for the next 2 years. I think he's an absolute monster. Drew Allar will take over at quarterback for the Nittany Lions. He had a really good Rose Bowl game. And folks, forget, they beat a really good Utah team in that Rose Bowl. Players weren't really sitting out in that game. I think Dalton Kincaid and Clark Phillips III were the only 2 off the top of my head that sat out that game fresh. Man, I'm looking at this. Yeah, they got a few things to replace on the defense side of the ball, but talk to me, Fresh. What are you seeing with Penn State?
Well, I think first off, with Clifford gone and he's gotten his doctorate and he's left Penn State, now he's a Green Bay Packer taking over Aaron Rodgers' locker. Drew Allar, the show is yours. And are you going to take advantage of the opportunity to be the quarterback, not having to look over your shoulder, not having to have doubts? You've had a full year under it, spring practice, fall practice. You got a lot of every time last year. Now's your chance to shine and really take this program to a big time level. Let's just not forget that Penn State has yet to make the college football playoff. It's been Michigan or Ohio State. They've not been able to represent the Big Ten. And last year, depending on how you look at it, they won out to getting the Rose Bowl because Michigan and Ohio State both were in the playoff. So this is also a sign of Penn State and James Franklin. When are you going to take that next step? The 1 year you did win the Big Ten, Ohio State and Michigan were having quote-unquote down years. And now you're going against 2 of the elite programs in your own side of the division, not just in the conference. How do you take your program to the next level and build? You've built a roster. You've recruited fantastic the past few years. Allar and Singleton and Allen at running back. You have a pair of tailbacks that can run all day long. How's the offensive line own against Michigan's defense? How's the offensive line take it to Ohio State's defense? How are those 2 games? Because really, when it comes down to it, the schedule is just those 2 games. I don't care. You might play Iowa. You might play Illinois, West Virginia, Maryland, Indiana, whoever. The only 2 games that truly matter and are going to matter for Penn State is Ohio State and Michigan. And it's been like that every year for the past, I don't know how many years, but that's really the only 2 games that need to be their focus and drive. If you get 3 others, if you slip up somewhere else, that's on your own fault for looking past. You got 10 easy games and you have those 2 matchups. You've got to be prepared offensively and defensively to do it. Offensively, I think you have young pieces, and they're going to be, if they can play it up to a level. They competed early on with Ohio State last year. 2 years ago in Happy Valley, they gave Michigan all they could handle. So there's times where they show up and they make things happen. But can you give them a full 4 quarters and survive? They gave Ohio State a heck of a football game, and then late it became the C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison show, and they couldn't stop them. Can you play a full 4 quarters and get it done? And can the offense score enough touchdowns and not settle for field goals? Because in that game, they also set up for a bunch of field goals. Can they find ways to finish it out? Defensively, Kalen King and Abdul Carter, you're leading this defense. In my opinion, those are 2 first-team All-Americans. I have them as my first 2, both on my first team All-Irrational Confidence, which we'll release the full lineup later. If those 2 guys can step up and rise up the rest of the talent on that Penn State defense, this team can be very, very special. I mentioned earlier, the toughest 4-game stretch that I could actually find is the first 4. You get West Virginia, you're going to get a Power 5 opponent to open up the season. You're going to get Delaware, you're going to get your K-Walk. And then you get Illinois and Iowa. If you're not ready to play right off the bat, you could go 2-2, 3-1. But if you lose one of those games, you're in trouble. You've got to be ready to go. You don't have the 3 or 4 kicks to get yourself going into the season. And then obviously be ready for Ohio State. Be ready for whatever quarterback comes from the Buckeyes. Be ready for that plethora of receivers who are going to run all over the place. And there's 2 tailbacks that are going to come in there. And that much improved defense. Can you pull off the upset? Can you shock the world? Penn State's done it before. Can you do it this time? Can you beat Michigan? Can you beat the good Michigan Harbaugh team? You beat the bad ones early on, but can you beat the good Harbaugh Michigan football team? You haven't done it the past 2 years. Can you get that done? Can you finish it out? If you can win one of those, if you can win both, obviously it's fantastic. You'll be undefeated, but you've got to do it physically. Michigan's a physical football team. Harbaugh's built it just like Bo Schembechler. He wants offensive and defensive line, run the football, play defense, be hungry, be nasty, be physical. If you can match that, you're in great shape. Ohio State, much more of that spread the field, They are a tough team in the trenches, but they're going to spread you out and they're going to throw the ball over the yard and then run it down your throat. Can you compete at a high level to score points? You're not going to have to score 40 to beat Michigan, but you probably got to score 40 to beat Ohio State in most cases. Can you play both mindsets throughout the season? Can you adjust your philosophy to fit whatever that game is going to require? You can't get too cocky versus either of those two teams and expect to win. You've got to come in humble and be able to get it done. And James Franklin, we talked about this before, I think even last year. When Penn State doesn't get much credit, is not really talked about, that's when they show up big. But now you have expectations. Now we're putting you at number 5 in the country. Other people have you, just around that top 10, just around the top 5. Are you going to live up to those expectations? Are you going to surpass them? Or are you going to have the team sort of drop off? This is also on your legacy as the head coach there at Penn State. You recruit great. You bring in tons of players. But when are you going to be at the level of competing for the playoff? Because now the playoff means something. Yeah, it's going to be 12 teams in the future, and you'll probably be in going forward. You don't have to worry about this conversation. But this year you do. This year there's still 4 teams. This year you've got to go win Big Ten titles, and you got to compete for them. And if you're not beating the 2 other big teams in your side of the division, you're just there. And your job eventually could get on the line. So this is a big year for them to live those expectations and take them to the next level. The ceiling for Penn State, 12-0. Do they have the talent on paper? Could they beat everybody on the schedule? Yes. The floor is 10-2. If they're anything lower than 10-2, James Franklin, in all likelihood, at the regular season, his job should be come into question, because I could see them losing to Penn State. I could see them losing to Ohio State and Michigan. But if you're losing to anybody else in this schedule with this team, maybe you're not the right guy. So this is also big pressure on you to show up, not just the players you're recruiting, because you're getting a bunch of 4s and 5-star recruits. You're finishing top 10 every year. This is on you to show up now as the game day coach and get it done. Not the offseason coach, the game day coach, because you have the players. Now can you get them to rise up and play at the high level? And that's where I see Penn State this year. A lot of talent in this roster, but I'm really excited to see what they do in Happy Valley if they can live up to expectations.
Penn State scares me, Fresh. I've been saying this for the last 2 years, and I'm really happy, again, as an Ohio State fan, that Penn State's coming to the Horseshoe and we're not having to go to Happy Valley. Again, I'm going to kind of echo the same thing you're saying here. It's a 3-game season to me. I mean, I'll throw in 4. Traveling to Champaign week 3 to face the Illini, that's not going to be an easy road test, but you should have the talent to beat that team. You should. Illinois does have a very good run defense, and they do have the horses up front to stop the run. I just don't know if you could stop the run for a full 60 minutes against this Allen and Singleton. They're just going to eventually overpower them. Week 4, Iowa, that's a big game for them. Iowa always plays tough. Kirk Ferentz is going to have Iowa's defense ready to play. If Iowa has an offense this year, they're going to be dangerous. Remember, that's always an elite level defensive team. Really, their Achilles heel will always be the offense. But you're right. At the end of the day, this season is going to be determined a success or a failure, whether or not they pull off a win against Ohio State, whether they pull a win off of the Wolverines, or both. And really, that's going to what it comes down to. If I'm looking at Penn State, there's so much to be excited. If I'm a Nittany Lion fan, between Allen and Singleton, I'm jumping up and down. Like, seriously, I don't know of a university out there that I would say, like, head and shoulders better. You have 2 running backs better than these 2 guys. Like, I really, it would be very, very difficult for me to pick somebody better than these 2. That's how highly I think of both of those tailbacks out there. I want to see more out of Allard. Comes in highly ranked, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions when he played last year. I like that a little bit. Parker Washington's going to be the big thing. If Parker Washington starts to increase a little bit with where he kind of played last year during his he got drafted. Washington's not the guy I'm thinking of. My apologies on that one. I'm thinking of Tinsley there, and he's the one that also got drafted. So I screwed up on both of those. I'll figure out who the guy I'm trying to think of here when I go back into my notes. But I want to see how they're going to be able to throw the football here. I want to see who's going to step up as a wide receiver for Penn State. They got a great defensive backfield now. Joey Porter Jr. is gone, but Kalen King is back. He had 15 pass defenses last year, was one of the leaders on the opposite side of Porter. he saw a lot more action because when we broke down the tape last year going into the draft season, and I looked at the Ohio State tape, and we were kind of looking at where Joey Porter would do matched up against Marvin Harrison Jr. If you go back and watch the tape, it's not Joey Porter Jr. that was matched up with Harrison Jr. It was Kalen King. That shows me what type of faith that James Franklin had in it. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., like most other people, torched him that day. But I don't know many secondaries that could have really contained Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best players in college football. This is a really, really good Penn State team. I mean, I would be really excited. It's quiet in Happy Valley, and I always have said this, a quiet Happy Valley scares me. I'm going to say, I'm with you, Fresh. Their floor right now is 10-2. I think that they have all the talent in the world to be 10-2, have a similar year as last year. They're very similar to me as how I perceive Tennessee. Is Tennessee that notch below Alabama and Georgia in the SEC? Is Penn State that notch below Ohio State and Michigan? You got to be one of the big boys to be able to consider one of the top teams in the conference. I think that there's all the talent in the world. I'm going to say that they're going to go 11-1. I think that's the ceiling there. I would have a hard time seeing them beating both Ohio State in Columbus and Michigan. I think one of the two of them is going to slip up. They have the talent to go 12-0, but I'm going to say 11-1 is their ceiling. But really, this is we should expect a lot of success for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think the best, you mentioned both the running backs there. The first thing I actually wrote on my notes when we were starting this whole thing out is run the bleeping ball. And I put like 8 exclamation points. If LR is struggling or is not comfortable, you got 2 workhorses and you keep running them. You probably have depth behind them. Keep them healthy, control the football, control the pace of the football game, and run down someone's throat. And that might lead to some serious success.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to figure out by the time we talk to the first game here, I wrote down the wrong wide receivers because I was looking at last year's stats. But I'll figure it out who I was trying to talk